Hey everyone, this is Atlas, and tonight I decided to bring on a friend of mine and ask him some questions and kind of get to his background of why he started his podcast in the first place. And over time, we have gotten to know each other through the roundtables, but we've never really had a one-on-one where we've just talked together. So I convinced him to come on with me tonight. And so tonight I brought on Patriot Underground. um, Hi.
Hi, Atlas. How are you? It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I never do this. But it's so much fun to actually be able to talk to you outside of the roundtable because we've never really done that, have we?
No, we really haven't. It's been I've had some private conversations, well, you and I just had kind of our first private conversation there before we started recording, and I've had some with with Omega, of course, as you know, and I've had I had a private conversation with Wingman actually. The first time he and I spoke, we talked for a while, but and actually, Girl Next Door, I spoke to her. We had a one-on-one conversation. So yeah, I think you and Rhode Island, I think, are the only ones in the core group that I haven't had a one-on-one conversation with. So this is it's kind of fun. I was hoping that we would find time to do it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, Rhode Island, you're next.
Yeah, Rhode Island, you're up. Absolutely. We got to round out the circle.
She needs a podcast too. Actually, a lot of the people on there, I think, need a podcast, especially Soaring Duff, because I think that she is a lot of fun. And she has so much stuff to offer. And I've loved listening to all of you. It's been like, I remember the first night that we did the roundtable, my face hurt because I was smiling so much because after, I guess we've all went through these long periods of isolation, and to actually sit down and talk to people. I mean, even though none of us saw each other face to face, but just sitting down and talking to one another, and nobody's sitting there arguing, but at the basis of everything, we all believe the same. That was so refreshing. So the whole night, my face was just beaming because it felt like so much joy that was brought to me that night, after so long of isolation. And what was funny was everyone had that feeling because we've all been just kind of separated from our friends and our family and our coworkers and all of this, and just to sit there and to actually come to, I guess, like a table and agree with one another, that's just been lacking so massively. And just like connection with one another, it's just been it was so refreshing to actually have those, and to every single one of them was so wonderful, and they just all brought these incredible things to the table, and I was so blessed to be a part of it. So really, I mean, like, thank you. Because that was
well, thank you very much. I really, honestly, my whole thought behind the roundtable was exactly that. Was, I was getting early on, I was getting just pretty amazing feedback from the audience, and there were people who were, not only were they commenting, but I was getting people writing me these, long emails and just, pouring out their life story to me and telling me all these things about themselves. And, it got me thinking that, there's just so many folks out there who, if they had an opportunity, if they had a platform to be able to come on and to share ideas, would probably really love the opportunity to do it. And for me, selfishly, I just always, like you said, I felt that sense of isolation in my life. I've been talking about it a lot really on my show recently. The deeper that we get into this process really of devolution and really watching everything be dragged out into the light. it feels as the more time goes on, I think the lonelier it gets for people, especially people like myself who tend to be surrounded by, folks who don't really see things my way. Let's just put it that way, or people who are just completely asleep and refuse to acknowledge what's going on in the world. And I really do believe that the podcast was God's way of saying, look, you need to start finding like-minded people. And of course, I didn't understand that at the time. I mean, at the time for me, it was really just a matter of wanting to get my own voice out there, as I needed some sort of an outlet. As you can probably tell, I love to talk at this point. So, I needed that in my life. And I tried to find that. I tried to find it in my family. I tried to find it amongst my friends. I mean, I was wise enough to know that I probably wasn't going to find it amongst my coworkers, but nevertheless, I mean, I looked pretty much everywhere to try to find like-minded people in my immediate surroundings. And when you couple that with my genuine desire to want to talk about things that are near and dear to my heart, and what could be more near and dear to my heart than the things that I talk about on my show? It's very, very frustrating when you pretty much feel stonewalled in every direction that you go. And that's really what led to me wanting to do the podcast in general, that in the beginning. But I knew, and I also knew in the beginning, that I wanted the mission that I was on to really be about the people. I really wanted it to be focused on, the perspective, of course, my perspective, but also, always making it a priority to voice the perspective of, the common American. That was really I think a founding principle for me in terms of my vision when I first started out. But it was really more for me in the beginning. But once I started to get that feedback, I started to realize that there are so many people out there who, a lot of these folks, they have no desire to come on and, be on the air, do any recording or podcasting or anything like that, or be part of a roundtable. But still in all, they wanted to share important things about their life with me. And I was very moved by that. And as time went on, I, kind of gravitated toward this idea, the possibility that I could use this platform to be able to bring people together. And not only that, but, to bring different voices and introduce different voices to people out there. And of course, the first time you do anything, you're not really sure how it's going to go. But the first time I had a one-on-one discussion with Omega, folks, for the most part, really responded well to that. A lot of people were like, wow, it's really great to hear another perspective. And of course, that at that point in time, I really hadn't had the idea of a roundtable. In truth, it was really in part Omega who gave me the idea, because he had mentioned that his sister, I think, was considering starting a YouTube channel, and mentioned the possibility of doing some kind of a roundtable discussion. And he was kind of the one who really sort of put that idea in my head. I don't know if he knows that or not, but shortly thereafter, I guess the puzzle pieces just kind of fit. And I thought, you know what, let's try this. And, the first time you do something, you never know how it's going to work out. You really know nothing about how folks are going to respond. But I had a good feeling that, that bringing together some very interesting people from different backgrounds who could articulate very well and who could share different information and different perspectives could only really be to the benefit of the audience. And unfortunately, I was right. And it's been an amazing experience. And I've been continually talking about it, as you're a listener of my show, and that, every single episode really lately, this has been something that I've been reflecting on, because like I said, it's in my own life, I've got a number of issues going on. And of course, we're all going through this process together. And, the deeper we get into it, I think that the more difficult it gets. And I think the more we really need to lean on each other.
Yeah. I think that when I joined the roundtable, it was like a kind of a big changing moment for me. I don't know if you know that, but it really was. Just to actually be able to connect with other like-minded people was incredible. And it was, normally none of us would have ever met, but because of this movement and everything that's been a part of it. It has brought people together in just like this incredible way where you love one another, you appreciate one another, you look at each other differently, and you see value in another person. That I think that's been, well, I mean, I talked about it before about how it's just been lost. And I I hope that this starts kind of growing, not just for you, but for a lot of people that are becoming awake. I hope that people start realizing how valued they are and how loved they are and what they really have to offer, because I think so many people re- just don't realize how incredible God has created them to be. And we've kind of suppressed so much about our lives and our abilities and our gifts. And when you sit there and you actually listen to other people, you can tell them that, because when in your own home, in your own family, you just see everyone every day. And sometimes when people say stuff to you that's maybe nice or whatever, you're just kind of like, oh, okay. But when other people say it to you that have never met you before, I don't know, it like sparks something in you, like, oh, wow, thank you. Because you don't really see, a lot of people don't really see value in themselves.
Mm.
Um, and it wasn't until recently that I started realizing, I mean, through all of this stuff, all of this movement, I started realizing the block, the walls that I had put up in my life, and how that has shaped me. And now the Lord is bringing me back to tearing down those walls and kind of looking at things differently, to where it's not so much as scary as it used to be, because I blocked out a lot of my life, like I blocked out a lot of pain. I blocked out people that brought me discomfort, or things that didn't bring me joy. I would just block it out. And now, through a lot of this stuff, through this awakening, and I think that that's a process that a lot of people are going through right now, is they're reevaluating not just what they see and what they feel like is happening politically, but also the stuff that has been these walls that they put up their whole life, and has caused them to feel isolated or not understand why something happened. And now when you go back to that, or when I go back to it, I can see things a lot differently and it doesn't rule my life in the same way. It has given me more freedom, when before, I think fear ruled me a lot. And I think fear rules a lot of people, and it keeps them from doing things that they love, because they're afraid to do it. They're afraid of what other people will think. And then when you decide to not allow that to happen anymore, and you don't give it that power,
Something really amazing happens.
yeah, it does.
Yeah. And what you just described, really, the way that we all have to fight that battle against our fears. In my view, it's a reflection of the way that this world, this very much captured world, was constructed. And it was always meant to do exactly what you just described. And the difference is that now all of us are coming together. All of us feel the same energy. All of us understand that what always was is not what always will be. And we understand that, things are genuinely changing. There's an energy shift that's been happening for years. It's been very, very subtle, I think, for years. But in recent months, I think certainly in the past year, but certainly in recent months, the rapid pace at which people are finding one another, are coming together, are forming unbelievably powerful bonds. People who have never actually been in the same room, never met, never been face to face, and yet consider people an extension of their family, literally. That speaks to where we're at right now. And I think that people feel a genuine magnetism toward one another. And, it was something that I honestly didn't even really know was going to be there. I mean, I started this journey about 7 months ago, more than 7 months ago. And it's amazing to me how much I've discovered along the way. I mean, I had a feeling that there were going to be a lot of people out there who thought like I did and who would be interested in hearing some of my reflections, but I completely underestimated. I mean, you were talking about, our expectations of ourselves and the fact that we have lived all of our lives. Not only have we been taught to live in fear, but part of that fear is this sort of self-centered fear that we have ingrained in us, that we really are minuscule and small and without any kind of sway or power, or without any kind of ability to affect other people in a positive way, or to make any kind of a difference in the world. That's also part of the social construct that they set up, that our eyes would always be on celebrities and sports stars and movie stars and all of these, all of their people. And that would be the false idol that we would look up to, instead of the virtue that we honestly, deep down inside, we felt and we wanted to find and share amongst each other. Instead, we had that misdirected. But what's happening now is that people are recognizing that. And the discovery that human beings can actually come together and love one another and have it be a genuine, pure feeling of just wanting to be around one another and wanting to enrich each other's lives and wanting to just dwell amongst each other, is the way we were created. That's what we were intended to be. And instead, we were forced into a world and forced into a social construct that never aligned itself with our spirit and never aligned itself with our soul. There was always a disconnect that we felt. And it, in some ways, I think it caused, for all of us, the awakened, it caused a crisis within our soul, and that we didn't understand, but we always knew that there was something about us and our spirit that could never accept what it was being force fed. And over time, because this is, it's been a long process. And like I talked about recently, the way I look at it, we all had to go on our separate journeys, so to speak. And those journeys, that when you go on a journey alone by yourself, it's a lonely road. And certainly this was a very lonely journey. I mean, and I can ultimately only speak for myself, but I know that a lot of people out there have shared the sentiment with me that, the things that I talk about have been very close to their own experience. And we've had to go down these roads as individuals. We've had to travel down all of these different paths to get to a point where I think we made some discoveries about ourselves. And I think at some level made some decisions in our own personal lives about the direction that we, where we were in life, and, ultimately where we wanted to go and the direction that we wanted to head, and a recognition that where we were at that specific time was not really conducive to where we wanted to be. And there had to be some kind of a split, some kind of a, whether it was overt or whether it was just something more subtle, but some kind of a declaration that, this is not who I am and I need to move in a different direction. And that's frightening, especially when you don't have anybody around you who knows, who speaks the same language and sees the world the same way. I mean, we all start this journey, I think, in a sense, kind of the same way. We're all kind of thrust into, it's almost like metaphorically where you have to choose two separate doors. of two separate roads. And all of us have chosen the road less traveled. And we get thrust onto that path. I think early on in our lives, we recognize there are differences about us. We feel different than other people tend to seem to feel, at least on the surface. There's a sense of, amongst patriots that I've talked to, a deep sense of feeling of alienation and isolation in society. So many of us have shared these experiences. And my feeling again is that, that God designed it this way, that we would all have to travel down these lonely roads, but he wouldn't have it that way forever. And when it got to the point where, we were in the final phases of this journey, which I believe we are. I mean, I believe we're in the final phases of the build up to the real big event that's going to really set things in motion. As I've been talking about, the closer we get to that, the more difficult it really becomes in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And I think that's why now there's such a heightened sense of emotion and gratitude and appreciation amongst patriots for one another. That's why we're all feeling that intense energy. We're feeling that intense energy coming into the world, but we also feel it radiating out from one another towards one another. And, it's having a genuine impact on people. I think it's changing people's lives. I really do.
I think you're right. I mean, when I look back at, like I just said that a lot of my childhood stuff, I had blocked out, and now the Lord is allowing me to go back, to see the stuff that I had blocked out, I guess, and kind of break things down. But, even when I was really young, I remember feeling things, like I could feel almost like energies of people, on a deeper level than others around me. And I think at some point, I don't know, I think at some point I kind of toned it down, and I felt like I needed to shut it off because nobody else seemed to operate the same way I did. And as have gotten older, he's brought that out in me again. But it's been through isolation and through trials and trying to figure out who I really am and getting back to the core of my soul, that I had suppressed for such a long time because I felt like I needed to fit in with other people around me. And then, even though I think there was a time where I would get upset that some people would enter and some people would leave my life. And the Lord showed me, that the reason why is because they were only meant to be there for whatever lesson I needed to learn at that time, or, whatever, just for that moment. And then some people are meant for a lifetime. And after the Lord had kind of showed me about what it was like to feel love, like love in the purest form possible, that he had created us the way that he loves us, which is not something that we feel actually on this realm, because it's just so incredible and so powerful. There's all of these things that the Lord's bringing out right now and showing me. And I remember that verse from the Bible where it says, love is the greatest commandment. You're supposed to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind. And this is the greatest commandment. And then the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. And now it has like a whole new meaning for me, because of all of this stuff in our life that's meant to distract us, like what you were just saying. It's meant to keep us from really loving one another and appreciating each other. And I think that now, because of this isolation, because of these trials that we had to go through, which has undoubtedly made us stronger, I think it's also showing us value in one another. and really appreciating that and really praising other people for what they have to offer instead of seeing people so in such a superficial light, like celebrities and all of that stuff, which I mean, I used to, of course, I used to watch a lot of movies and I don't think I worship them, but I definitely like was interested in their lives. And over time, through all of this process, I did realize a lot of them were evil, but I also realized what a distraction it was. That all of these things in technology and different things technology can be great because of what we're doing right now, but it also can be so distracting that it keeps us from really connecting with one another and actually loving on one another. And I think that love is changing, and people are starting to see that and value each other in just this most beautiful way, because that's how God created us.
Yeah.
And oh no, go ahead.
No, you weren't done yet. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think that's just how he created us. And right now I feel like that's part of our transition, is that it's almost like he's bringing us back to Eden, the way that we were meant to be created for, before the fall, before sin entered. And if you start really taking down a lot of these evil entities that have been controlling our world, I mean, I don't think people realize the impact of just that has, because there's so much witchcraft and demonic activity that's always kind of in the atmosphere all the time. And if you didn't have that suppression, because I don't know, have you ever seen, there's like this diagram that actually shows how love radiates out of a body, and love and fear, and if you're putting them side by side, love just expands out and it just will fill a room. And just having people that genuinely love one another and just having them placed all over the world, I mean, it would just change the atmosphere completely. I don't know. I feel
think
like
that's what's happening. I mean, I think what you're describing is exactly what's happening. I think that's why people are having such a powerful response to it, because it's not just a bunch of, folks coming together on the internet just to have a little chat,
no.
Or to share some ideas about things and then just kind of go about the rest of their day. I mean, I think years ago that was the case. I think that life was, I mean, I certainly remember not too long ago, before the Trump era, obviously, and really, I think obviously before 9/11, everything accelerated after 9/11, but even after 9/11, it took some time, I think, for life to really start to feel like it was really moving in the wrong direction really fast.
Mhm.
But I mean, over time, it's been a gradual process, I think, where I think people have come to the realization that, we've been living in a system for so long now. All of us have been really just force fed a bunch of values that don't align with who we really are, and they don't really reflect the character of this country, of the people in this country. And I think that we've been, I mean, clearly now, I mean, I had the same fascination with celebrities and things along those lines when I was younger, before I understood the paradigm for what it is. And I understood that, I mean, I understand now that anything the establishment wants you to look at is exactly what you should run in the other direction. I mean, anything that they're trying to give you is 200 proof poison. And I didn't understand that at the time. I just kind of looked at it and said, wow, look at all these successful people. And, I talked about this recently. I had no idea the dark worlds literally beneath all of this stuff. But even as putting that aside, I mean, even if we don't get into some of the really dark stuff that we know exists, we certainly know that what we see reflected in popular culture and what we've seen reflected in popular culture, and yes, there have always been exceptions, but for the most part, increasingly over the years, I mean, I would suggest certainly over the past 5, 6 years, especially, and even more intensely over the past 2 to 3, we've seen an acceleration, a full blown acceleration toward not just content that is designed to lower our vibrational frequencies and designed to divide us and not divide all those things, but really content that's sick, really, really sick content that they're mainstreaming now. They're attempting to put in the mainstream and to move the Overton window, so to speak, and make it seem normal now that, for example, these shows on Netflix where they're sexualizing children and to normalize that. And I think that what that's done, and I think, to be honest with you, I question a lot of that and whether some of that stuff might be white hat maneuvering behind the scenes, given the timing of all of this stuff. What we'll find out is to red pill people and to say, wait a second, that a lot of people are just saying, wait a minute. One minute I was watching, I had Netflix and I was getting these nice DVDs delivered to my house, and I had this streaming content and I could watch these nice movies and this and that. And now all of a sudden I turn on Netflix and I'm getting pedophilia.
Yeah.
And I think that, this is obviously, an extreme example. That's a real one. But I think the point that I'm making is that more and more and more as time has gone on, people have come to the realization that not only does what they see on TV and in popular culture and in music and all these things not reflect who they really are, it also doesn't reflect who their neighbors are, who their friends are, who the people are that they associate with. Not to say that there aren't these elements in our society, they are, but the cabal has been very, very convincing. It's the same way, and same way they do in the mainstream media, of taking their point, their viewpoint, their narrative, and making it appear through all this dark magic, like you were talking about, literal dark magic and sorcery, that's the overall opinion of your average American. And I think that's been one of their greatest tricks. And that's the way that they've kept us so isolated and feeling so alone, because, we can't seem to reconcile. Because there's this slick presentation on TV that looks so real. And it just seems so authoritative and confident that it's impossible that it couldn't be real. And what they're talking about and all of these polls and all of these numbers, and, they've got all of this evidence that shows that everybody agrees with them, but I don't. The people that I know don't. And, what's going on here? And I think that, for more and more people, yes, it's sort of like people have gone in two different directions. There are people who have really, just gone off the deep end, unfortunately, with the mainstream media. And then there are people who have woken up. And what really ultimately makes that determination? And, I wish that's like the $1 million question, but I think that people have slowly over the years come to the realization that our culture as a whole should be a reflection of what we value. It should be a reflection of the things that are ultimately important to us. But as you pointed out, we've been so indoctrinated and so distracted and so derailed from the truth and ultimately from our sources of strength. And I've talked about this quite a bit lately, that our ultimate source of strength is our connection and our love to one another. And I think that what's happening is that collectively, all of the patriots, and especially, the people that are, on my Telegram and people who are active and staying in contact with me and through my videos and, this sort of digital family that we've created together, there's a simultaneous, I think, acknowledgement of this energy, of this feeling that we're all sharing together. And that to me is evidence of a divine force. And, so what I'm doing with my channel is just one channel. And there's so many out there. There's so many groups and so many people all over the world. And as you put it, I think this was always God's plan, to take this technology that was ultimately designed, I think, to corral us and to be used toward our own destruction. For us to be able to use that technology, to be able to connect with one another. I think that was always the plan. And I think it was supposed to happen at this point in time as this new light and this new energy and this force was coming into the world and we could all feel it. I think God knew that we were going to need each other and that we were going to need to experience this with one another, that there was no possible way that we were going to be able to weather this storm alone. And, I don't think he would ever have it that way. And I think that's why, we are where we are. And that's why I'm feeling just this enormous floods of gratitude coming into me all the time. That it's hard for me to even put into words. I mean, I'm having experiences where I'll just be driving around and doing things that I normally do, but everything just looks different and feels different, and everything feels more vibrant. Every cell in my body feels like it's more alive. And I wish in those moments, I wish that I could, it's kind of similar to what you described when the Lord poured that into you. It's like, I wish that I could continue to feel it. It doesn't stay with me. It's a fleeting feeling, but it's an undeniable experience of about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if I'm lucky, but of this energy. And I've talked quite a bit about it. And I think that we're all having our different experiences with it, but I think we're all experiencing that energy from the same source. And it's that same energy, that same source that's drawing us together like magnets, like we've been talking about. I think it's very real. And it's very, very tangible. I mean, I feel it more and more every day. I don't know about you.
Oh my gosh. I definitely do. I think every day it just seems stronger to me. And the stuff even that the Lord has brought to me and shown me in just several months, like it's completely changed my life. And I just feel things now on such it's just a more powerful level than I ever felt before. And a lot of it, I didn't realize I was capable. And then after walking this path, it just kind of fell into my lap. Well, I guess not really. I mean, the Lord, I feel like he just was training me this whole time. And now I feel like it was finally time for him to show me the next step of everything. Because I think going into this next phase, it's going to be important for the connection that people have. I think it's going to be really important, and people are going to really need to lean onto one another, because it's going to be painful. And it has to be. You can't learn something. I mean, some people might, sure, but you can't really learn something unless if you go through pain. And it's going to have to almost rewire your system to where you never want to go back to where we were. It has to be just like so painful that not only does it do that, but it brings people together, because that's what you have to rely on. You have God and each other. It's nothing else. I mean, everything else is like, it's like this fake satisfaction that you can get, just like temporary, like a drug. It's just temporary for you. But God and each other, like genuinely loving and caring about each other, because it is going to be so, I think when they start finding out about things on the political spectrum, it's going to be like a little bit of a pain in the rear. But when they actually start diving into what's happened to their kids and kids all over the world, and the trafficking of people, and what all the cabal has actually done, I think it's going to be so earth-shattering for some people, because I think the majority of people are just really kind, loving people, but they don't want to see that. They don't want to know that exists. Who wants to know that evil exists? But I want to know the truth. I always have. I've always wanted to know what is really out there. And when they start exposing some of this stuff, it's going to be absolutely gut-wrenching for people. And I do think that, I mean, I hate to say that, but I think that some people are definitely going to commit suicide over it, because it's going to be so devastating to go through that, to actually know that this was a reality. And I mean, you've said before that, talking about people in prison, and how when a serial killer or someone else that has come in that's hurt children comes in, and the other people in the prison know about it, they will actually kill him, because even that crosses this major line with people. And I
Absolutely.
just, I can't, I don't know. I mean, 9/11 was a good example of what happens, about us coming together as a country. I mean, they meant for it to bring fear, which it absolutely did, and chaos and pain. It did that. It caused those things, but at the same time, it brought people together from all over the world. And I think that is what's going to happen on just this massive scale, where the people that are awake, that is going to be their responsibility. That is going to be where God actually puts them. And that's why they're all kind of isolated and scattered all over the world, because there's a moment in time that's going to come, and they're going to be called for that.
Well, I think we're at that moment, quite honestly. And I think that, we're coming together now, even though we're separated by great distance. I mean, I was talking about this the other day, not to go on a jag about it, but it's amazing to me that I have people who are listening to the podcast who are really from all over the world. I've had people write to me I had a guy write to me from Thailand the other day, because he heard me mention that, I hadn't had any listeners from Asia. And he was saying, oh yeah, you do. And all over the place. And I think that that's what's happening. I think that we are, we're all digital warriors. We're all coming together at this moment. But, one of the things that you said that I thought was, you made a really good point, is that, that so many folks out there they're good people, and they're decent people, and they just don't want to live in a world where these types of realities take place. And so therefore they've convinced themselves that either these realities don't exist, or even though they may exist at some level in some form, they're not at the scale that they actually are in truth. Or maybe some people even have convinced themselves that, yes, these things do exist in the world, but as long as I can continue to go on living my life and not have my life negatively affected by this evil, at whatever level they believe in it, well, then they don't really care that much about it. And I think for a lot of folks, I think at some level, at some subconscious level, I think people recognize, I don't think necessarily that, they're keeping hidden in their subconscious that they really do believe in the dumbs and all of the things that go on down there. I'm not suggesting that, but at some level, I think they do believe that this evil does exist, but they've bought into the lie, which is that, that they can override that sort of spiritual knowledge, or that conscience that's speaking to them in favor of comfort. And people have gotten to that point, and that's what induces the apathy. And this has all been done by design. You give people a nice cushy life, you preoccupy them with a million different things. And really all that they want to think about is just, getting through the day and paying their bills and going on vacation once a year, or maybe twice if they're lucky, and that's really what people focus on. And they've designed the system that way, so that there are so many people out there who feel and have felt, and I think this is all changing now, but I think historically they have felt completely disconnected from the real issues by design. But I also think that ties into what we're witnessing now with this devolution. I think because it's gotten to this point where the mind control and the apathy and the narcissism and the just the general laziness of our society has gotten so bad. And we've been trained and indoctrinated at such a level now where, the establishment has so many people literally like they're leading them around on a leash like they're an animal. I mean, it's gotten to that point. It's gotten so bad. I think that the white hats understood this and understood that it was going to be frustrating for the people who are already awake and who are just, saying, come on, get on with it. And, wish this had happened years ago already, if not months, days or months or weeks ago. But I mean, there was an acknowledgement amongst the white hats that this was a process that was going to take some time. You can't deny that there are a whole bunch of people out there. There's a massive portion of the population. I mean, a lot of these people have have recognized what's really going on, and they've taken the leash off, and they've stood up on their feet, and they've said, wait a minute, I'm not an animal. I'm not going to be led around. I have free will. I can make my own decisions. I can make my own choices. And that's happening with a lot of people. And then there are other people who just simply refuse to acknowledge that they're being led around on a leash. And that's exactly where the cabal wants them. But I think that, this is a process that's been going on for quite some time. And I think that the white hats understood that it had to be done in a very slow, methodical way through devolution, because that's the only way that it's going to ultimately feel like it's affecting everybody. I mean, when we talk about this process of devolution, we're really getting into here is we're talking about all different aspects of our society devolving at the same time: our financial system, our energy grid, our military, our military readiness, our the health of our citizenry, our government. I mean, all of our institutions, everything just falling apart at the same time. That's, in a pantomime sense, of course, that's what they've been doing. That's what's been happening this entire time. And really, the main goal behind this is to ultimately to win the hearts and minds of the people, because that's the only way that you get this done. I mean, this is what Juan O'Savin talks about repeatedly. Gene has talked about this repeatedly. I mean, all of the big name insiders have talked about this, that you need to have an overwhelmingly large consensus and coherency amongst the people in order to avoid devolving into a civil war, especially in a country like America that's so well armed. And, there's just so many weapons out there. I mean, you have to have that number of, Juan says 80%. And I think, and that's pretty accurate. I think you got to have 8 out of 10 people who are on the same page. I mean, when you think about how divided we've been for such a long time on so many different issues. I mean, and this has all been done by design. That's part of the recognition. That's part of the awakening process, is that all of these divisions were caused specifically to keep us from uniting against them. And I think once the penny drops on that one, and once people realize that all of these petty divisions that we've been fighting over and we've been obsessing over for all this time has been them leading us around on a leash where they want us to go. But the minute there's a grand scale awakening, where 8 out of 10 people get it and they realize that, that's game over. And that's when you really have the ability to make these grand type of moves that, that we know are coming. And, I do think we're getting very, very close. I mean, how close we're actually getting to an EBS situation or, that sort of a thing, I don't know. But I certainly think we're getting very close to a major event, which I've been saying I believe is going to be an arrest. I think it's going to be the first major arrest. And I think it's going to be real soon.
Well, and I mean, like when we say 80%, though, I don't think that means that everyone is as awake as we are. It's just that people are starting to see that something is wrong, and they're starting to get frustrated too with, yeah, I just went to the grocery store and there's hardly any food there. When stuff starts affecting your lives, because you were just talking about that, we have this pattern that we continue every day. We like our routines every day. And then when something starts disrupting this pattern, something starts messing with us financially, something starts messing with our food and, our health, everything. When all of these things, which is happening right now, all of these things are combining together to where it's like this vice that's just squeezing down on everybody. And at some point it's gonna bust. And I think that a lot of people now, maybe they're not awake to the reality of how much evil is actually happening or that is in the world right now. And that's okay. but at least they're starting to see that something is not right.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's a very, very important point. You know, we're not trying to suggest that, you know, when we hit that 80% number, that means that 80% of people or 8 out of 10 people are going to know the things that we know and the things that we talk about routinely. I mean, I think these things are all going to come out. There is going to come a time when, you know, 100% of people are going to know about these things. I don't think that's going to happen right away, but, you know, the 8 out of 10, what we're really talking about there is the consensus, you know, like you said, that, hey, look, you know, things are really messed up now. And, you know, we're really, really fed up, and we've really had enough. You know, we're, you know, when people go to the grocery store one too many times and there's no food, or, you know, they go to the gas pump and they have to pay $60 to fill up their gas tank. You know, I think what starts to happen is that these inconveniences start to add up. And then what happens is that it forces people to start paying attention. And I think that's what's happened, is that it's not as if people just simply wake up one day and they're awake. What happens is that I think is that people's lives have to get inconvenienced significantly before they start really even, I mean, in the case, I mean, in our situation, in our case, in this country in 2021, I mean, you know, you have to be pretty much heavily directly affected to even pay attention to something. And I think that's the whole point, is they understood this. You know, the good guys understood that in order to win the hearts and minds of the people, they needed to be shaken out of their apathy. And the only way to do that was to use this process of devolution to do exactly that, to get people to start paying attention. Because at a certain point, you have to start wondering, where's the food? Why is the supply line all messed up? Why are gas prices going through the roof? Why are there all these military conflicts going on? What is happening? You know, at a certain point, people have to start asking questions. And of course, the entire time, yes, you've got the mainstream media pumping disinformation and pumping out lies and propaganda. But what's happening is that circumstances, I mean, you know, Juan O'Savin talks about this a lot, and, you know, I think it's important. The mainstream media, they can't, and the cabal really by extension, they can't stop people from having grassroots experiences in their own lives. You know, so people can watch the mainstream media, they can listen to radio and TV and all this stuff, and they can hear all this propaganda. But when the devolution process has gotten to a certain point, there's nothing that they're going to be able to say that people are going to believe in. And it hasn't even gotten to the point where it's as bad as it's going to get. And it even, I mean, heck, months ago now, there were polls that were saying that 3 out of 4 Americans didn't trust the mainstream media. So you can only imagine what those numbers are now. I mean, people just simply aren't buying what they're selling. And so it's a process that takes time, but it needed to happen this way because people needed to be really, really inconvenienced. And like what you talked about at a deeper level, it goes way beyond being inconvenienced. That's just the first step in getting people to pay attention. But once all these truths start to come out, I mean, I agree with you that it has to be a whole different level of horrifying reality in order to permanently emblazon this on the conscience of humanity, to the point where we understand, you know, what happened, how we were led astray, and how bad and how evil and how dark and how twisted it got because of that. I think that those truths need to be told, and they need to be told 100% boldly, so that it can never happen again. And I think that ultimately that's the plan. Do I think that, you know, and I've been talking about this on my show lately, do I think that it's just going to be a whole avalanche of disclosure on, you know, on child, you know, ritual sacrifice and pedophilia? And do I think all these things are just going to come cascading down on the public all at once without any kind of forethought? No, I don't. I think that the white hats are doing this. I mean, when you think about how long it's taken us to get to this point in the process of the devolution process, especially when you consider Trump's entire presidency as a sting, which I consider it to be. When you think about how long it took us to get here, to set the stage, and how methodically planned all of this was, to me, it would seem totally incongruous to believe that there was not going to be any tact or any kind of forethought or process of restraint in terms of initially introducing all of this horrific information to the public. Because, I mean, even the things that we know about are just so bad that I can't even talk about. And, you know, and I consider myself to be fairly well informed on these issues. There are people who know way more than I do. Quite frankly, I don't even want to know. You know, but there is going to come a point where this information is going to come out. And like I've been saying a lot, you know, as one of my big questions is really going to be, how are we going to emerge from this fog of war? You know, once this tipping point is reached, and once these dominoes start to fall, and once truth starts to come out, you know, how long is it going to take for this inversion, you know, in this fog of war that we've been living under, you know, because I firmly believe that a lot of things that, you know, a lot of these tribunals have already taken place. A lot of these people have already been taken out. You know, how is this going to be played out for the public is a real big question of mine. But I certainly.
I think that there has to be like a counterweight here, because, you know, I mean, if not, it's just going to be this vacuum. And so there has to be something on their side that they do that replaces some of this evil that we're going to find out about. There has to be like some good that is introduced as well, you know? And I mean, I think at one point, if you go back to the mainstream media, I think that a long time ago, they were trustworthy. And I think that now, that was the whole purpose of the disease or whatever that they said came from China, was to purposely keep people separate. Because when they come together, then they start thinking, well, this is stupid. I don't, you know, and they start kind of breaking things down. Instead, they were purposely keeping people separated from one another to where they couldn't even talk together, and then keeping them at opposite ends of the battle, where they're just fighting each other instead of fighting the real enemy, which is the cabal and everything that they have done to purposely try to kill us off and keep us in a slave mentality. And now, you know, I was thinking about how all of this stuff is happening at Thanksgiving and at Christmas, which are just huge holidays for people. And the fact that now all of this stuff is starting to pop up on Yahoo and all these liberal sites saying that we're having food shortages and this is going to be the most expensive Thanksgiving that we've ever had because of how much all the food is costing now. And then you're not going to be able to get your kids Christmas presents. And all of this stuff is making people where they're like, well, why are we not being able to get all of this stuff? Why is all of these ships still stuck out in the ocean? Why aren't they coming into our port? It's purposely like directing people to where they're starting to question things without actually saying it, but it's putting it out there for them to where they're like, it's just signaling stuff to them, you know? And I think that it's going into their subconscious where they're just starting to really question what is really happening. And then you have this guy that's supposed to be the president, and he's just an idiot. And nobody even can believe anything that he's doing. And he almost seems like this drone, you know, that's just, it doesn't even seem real. And to me, it's not. And I never believed that he was the real one. But it's so over the top now where I think that people are really starting to be like, what is this? What is happening? Who did we vote for? And I think a lot of people kind of voted along party lines because orange man bad, you know, and everything like that. And now they're having this major buyer's remorse of, we really had it really well under Trump.
Orange man good, actually. He was really good.
He was so good.
Yeah, I mean, compared to this guy, I mean, it's amazing to me that anybody could still support Joe Biden. I mean, and that's really that's the least of it. I mean, it's amazing to me that anyone could actually even think that was Joe Biden. But even if you thought that was Joe Biden, I mean, I don't understand how anybody in their right mind could support Joe Biden. And I think that, I pretty much stand by that statement. I don't think that anyone in their right mind can, honestly. I think because you're right, it's gotten to the point where it's getting so cartoonish at this point. And this is all done by design, and people think that what they're witnessing with the shipping crisis and all of these things, a lot of people are really confused because they're listening to the mainstream media. They're trying to figure out what's going on, like you said. And this is also part of the process as well. They're realizing, because first of all, these are the same people who 3 out of 4 of them didn't trust the mainstream media anyway. And they're coming to the realization that if they continue to listen to the mainstream media, they're going to continually be lied to. So there's got to be other sources of information out there. There have got to be other people who are telling the truth about what's really going on. And this is exactly what's happening, is that people are coming to alternative media, to podcasts, in droves, because, there's a genuine desire and thirst for truth and for knowledge. And people are coming to understand that, with regard to the shipping crisis, for example, what they're being told having to do with the virus and having to do with, whatever the mainstream media is trying to spin as being the reason, the truthful reasons, you're not going to find those on mainstream media. And I think more and more people are starting to figure that out. And I think the unfortunate part is that it's gone beyond the point of, at what point are a majority of people not going to believe the mainstream media? Because we've already crossed that Rubicon. We've already been there. We've done that. And most people don't trust the mainstream media. The problem isn't the fact that people trust it, even any people anymore. It's the fact that it still exists in its current form. The fact that it's still allowed to exist, I think that there's this gigantic, elephant in the room for most people, because everybody, most people that you talk to, maybe not in my insanely loony circle here where I am, but, most people that you talk to, they're going to tell you, you get into a room with like 100 people, most of those people in the room are going to be bad-mouthing the mainstream media, and they're going to tell you they don't believe the mainstream media. And yet the fact that it still exists causes this sense of this clinging to this old narrative. It's this way of the mainstream media, even though nobody really believes their narrative, the fact that they still exist in a lot of minds shores up their narrative for people, because they've existed for so long, even though they've been discredited, even though they've been completely exposed as liars, they haven't been brought down. And I think that that's what's causing the problem in the minds of so many people. It's a good thing because it's causing people to seek out alternative information, but it's also a problem for a lot of people because they haven't been willing to completely discard the mainstream media and its narrative because of its confidence game, because of how well it's financed, because of how long and how institutionalized the mainstream media, how long it's been there, how long it's been an institution in our culture. I've heard from people who have said similar things in, about the BBC in England, that even though, you've got a mass awakening going on over there in the UK, still remains this cognitive dissonance when it comes to the BBC, because people were so indoctrinated and ingrained and mind controlled, literally, that they can't accept that what they're hearing on the BBC is not only not true, that it's an attack. It's in a form of silent weapon. And, but getting to that point, getting that through to people, it's easier said than done, which is why this whole process, for people who already, see the mainstream media for what it is, I've completely accepted that it's an enemy force, that it's a silent weapon. That's one thing, but a majority of people are not at that point yet. But they are at the point, like you pointed out, where they're starting to ask some very serious questions about where we are, why we're here, and the leadership that we have that's continuing to just completely devolve this country right before our very eyes. And I think that's the whole point, is to get enough people to say, wait a minute, we want to get off this train and we want to get off it now. And at that point, we'll have hit that consensus. And then what comes after that is a whole bunch of different levels and revelations that are going to come, but it has to begin somewhere. And I've always said that I think it's going to begin with issues that people already know about. Issues like the virus and issues like, the election, because these are, in a sense, they're kind of like entry issues into all of this corruption. And once people have accepted that all of this corruption exists, then they'll be more ready to hear the darker things that come out. And I could be wrong. There have been folks who have suggested it's all just going to come out at once. And, that may be the way it goes down. But I think there's going to be, given how long it took for us to get to this point to set things up in just the right way, for me, it just kind of seems incongruous that, we're going to have this tipping point and then all of a sudden everything is just going to flood out and it's just going to come out like a fire hose in everybody's face. I feel like the white hats probably have something else in mind.
I think that if the first arrest was actually Fauci, that would be a big one. And because I think that people, because of the separation, because of the virus, I think that people need to realize on a massive scale how badly that they've been lied to, because that opens up lines of communication, but even, I mean, the media is obviously still there, but then I don't know, I kind of wonder how much of a role that they still have, because you go to these ball games and you see all these people doing F Joe Biden everywhere, and there's massive amount of people there. And so many people are frustrated. So many people don't like him. I think that maybe they don't understand it on the level that we do, but they realize that something is wrong. And just knowing that, just even having that ability of seeing that something doesn't add up, I think that that's important. And if they do that, maybe with Fauci, I mean, I would love for it to be Hillary as well, but I think that there has to be something specifically with the virus that starts showing people that you have been lied to on such a massive scale. You have purposely cut people out of your life because they didn't agree with you on this issue, even though that they were right. It's going to be a humbling thing, because it's going to end up really making people check themselves a little bit of how deeply that they've been lied to.
Absolutely. They're going to come to that realization. It's going to be it's going to be quite the reversal. That's going to be part of it. The entire what we anticipate, what we expect is going to be how people react to things is going to be very, very different once this starts to come out there, but I kind of jumped in on your point. So
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to add that because I think it's important, is that, it's going to be a real rude awakening for people when they realize, like you said, that they have sacrificed entire relationships. And I mean, especially, some of these people out there have been really just absolutely, I mean, I don't even have words for how vicious they've been for people who just have a difference of opinion, who want to speak the truth, who want to share a different perspective. And when it comes out that all the things that we were talking about are actually true, when you stop and you really think about the impact of what that's going to do to our society, what that's going to do to the entire world, when the truth actually becomes authority again. I mean, that's not the world that we live in right now. I mean, it's the world that you and I live in, but that's not the world that, that the world at large, not even close. We still live in a world of perception is reality. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the existence of the mainstream media. because that's exactly what their purpose has always been, is to keep us locked inside of that mentality where perception is reality. Whatever they make us perceive is real, as opposed to what's actually real. And that's the system that we've been indoctrinated into. And that's the system that gives people this feeling of entitlement, that they can treat us this way, that they can, have this attitude toward people who have different opinion, because they've been led down this path. They're exactly where the cabal wanted them to be. But the whole paradigm is going to change. The whole thing is going to shift. And you're right. I do think there are going to be some people who aren't going to adjust. They're not going to be able to. I mean, some of these people aren't going to be able to process the realities, but then there are going to be other people who are just simply aren't going to want to accept a world that's right side up again, because they've adapted so well to upside down world that they're going to resist to the world being turned right side up again. I mean, our moral compass has been so jumbled and everything has just been so out of whack for such a long time. It's been such a struggle for us to even remain decent, honest, moral people in this evil, twisted world that they've created around us. They've completely screwed everybody up, and it's going to take time, and that's where I think, people like us are going to play a very important role. The Patriots are going to play a very, very important role in helping to coach people, I think, in a sense, on an individual basis. And we're going to go from being that laughing stock, that pariah, that person that, that nut, that loony, that conspiracy theorist, to all of a sudden there's going to be that reversal. And I think that reversal is going to be so profound that it's going to affect us. I think it's going to affect us in a massive way. People aren't even going to believe it. They're not even going to believe that it's real. They're going to feel like they're living in a dream. All of these people who at one point laughed at them and called them names and, made them feel like they were completely insane. And I mean, the list just goes on of what I could describe. Those very same people are going to be looking for answers. And I don't think we're that far off from that. I think we're going to get to that point where that first arrest is going to be, and I don't think it's going to happen necessarily overnight, but that first arrest is going to change the mentality of the world. I think that's where the first arrest is going to shock the world, like they're talking about. What it's really going to happen is the shock is going to be that somebody of this stature could actually be taken down. Because regardless of where you are in the political spectrum, all of us tend to agree that there are certain people who just seem untouchable. And when these people get brought down and there's a perp walk, whether it's, HRC or somebody like Fauci, I mean, I'd take any of the above, that's going to send shockwaves throughout the world. And I think probably most importantly, it's going to send shockwaves throughout all the minds of all the people out there in the world. And it's going to suddenly get them to ask and to take seriously this idea of corruption and evil. And it's going to take some time. A lot of people are going to resist it. There are going to be people who are going to try to fight back against it. I think the military, the white hats know full well that this is going to happen in certain areas. And I think they're prepared for it. But I think for the most people, I think it's going to be a rude awakening in terms of what's possible in this world. And I think for most people, the relief is going to be that, thank God, somebody like this can actually be brought to justice, because I didn't think that we lived in a world where that was possible.
I know I've talked to people about that. They'll admit that they believe HRC and Obama and all of these people are evil, but they're in the same breath, they'll say, but it doesn't matter because they're untouchable. And
exactly.
And I understand where they're coming from, because of all of these years, we've separated these people by categories, of groups, of saying that this is the good side over here, the Republicans and the Democrats. But what people didn't realize is they're all the same. And now when something like that happens, when it actually takes down someone of such a high stature, like what you're saying, I think people are going to be finally feel a sense of hope, because they knew it was there. I think a lot of people knew that it was there, but actually seeing these people being taken down. But even that, I do wonder how they're going to do that, because our system is so corrupt. Like our judicial system is so messed up. And I don't know if this has to be something done by John Durham or what, but I know that the people that he's been looking into right now are connected with the Clinton Foundation. And then I saw something yesterday about Huma, and I remember that Q had said follow Huma. So I'm wondering, she was saying that she was abused by some senator. So I don't know. I don't know. But so now, and then they have all the things that Trump did, with the executive orders with the dogs, like animal cruelty and all of that stuff that happened in Afghanistan, where people saw all of the dogs being left there and abused. And now all of this stuff is coming out with these dogs being in cages and with these gnat things and stuff around their heads. And they always talk about the dog comms and everything like that. And so I'm like, well, is that going to be, I mean, you don't ever know what is going to be the thing that actually takes these people down. But he already put all this stuff in place before he left. And I loved the episode that you did on devolution, because I hadn't really understood it very well until you actually went in and you started describing it. And it all makes sense. How he purposely put everybody in place for this time, for right now, all of the military leaders and everything. I mean, if Trump didn't have any authority, they would not be there at all. That would have been the first thing that Biden would have done in his administration to get them out. But but they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. They're there. And so are the executive orders that Trump put in place that, about trafficking and about a whole bunch of issues that if Biden was really Biden and he was really the president and he was really in control, they would have been gone right away. And everybody knows it. And, he would have closed down Gitmo. He would have done a lot of things if he was actually in control. And, that, I think the episode you're referring to, I was really just doing sort of a dive on the work of Patriot, because he's just amazing. I don't know if you've actually looked at any of his articles, but he's just masterfully over the past several months, he's put this all together. And, he had a speech where he, broke it down. So I just, was listening to him and took the key elements and really just reminded everyone. And, really, in essence, this was information that I had known, quite honestly, going back a couple of years. I remembered at the time, when Christopher Miller was put into place, and, and all of these other high profile people were put into place. And immediately after Biden was declared the winner, I had already known this, but I felt as if it was important to revisit these things, because I think that, when things don't happen, when expectations don't get met, and I've talked a lot about this, and I fall into the same trap, we tend to get very disappointed, and a lot of people, they become very disillusioned, very disheartened. And I think it's very important for us at this point in time to not every single time we have an episode or we talk about things, but it's important to go back and to revisit a lot of these important things that happened, these important pieces that were put into place, these dominoes that were put into place very strategically. And remember that now that we're talking, it's at that point, nobody was really talking about devolution. And that word really wasn't floating around, at least to my knowledge. A couple of years ago, it's something that's really kind of more recently come onto the scene. It's not as if it hasn't been batted about, but more recently, it's something that a word that is everyone's talking about it. And in order to really fully understand what that concept means, you have to understand how the dominoes were set up behind the scenes. And looking at these realities, I mean, you know, when I talk about the evidence pointing in a certain direction, I mean, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. If you look at the facts and you recognize how incongruous they are with the mainstream media narrative of Joe Biden and his administration being in control, and it doesn't add up, you know. And you look at Congress, you look at Schiff and all these people going after trying to get access to these PADS documents, trying to figure out what Trump was going to do. You know, they've done it, you know, they did it 4 times in 2020. They've done it again in 2021. Again, I think this is all pantomime, but, you know, they've been actively trying to get access to these documents. Clearly something's there, you know, clearly there's a reason that Biden's not allowed in the Pentagon, doesn't fly on Air Force One, all these security protocols, you know. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on of things that just simply don't add up. But the problem is, I think for a lot of people, is they tend to forget, you know, we also, this is also in a sense a trap of the mainstream media. You know, we get locked into their mentality of a 24-hour news cycle. And, you know, we you know, so something really significant can happen, you know, something like a story like a man like Christopher Miller gets put in this key position. But, you know, we forget about these things very, very quickly. Why? Because we've been conditioned to forget. We've been conditioned to, you know, move on to the next thing. And that's part of the information war. That's really been a tactic of the enemy to constantly be changing the topic onto something else. It doesn't really even matter necessarily what the topic is, as long as they have the ability to be able to switch the channel in our brain whenever they want to. And, you know, and to get a lot of people to forget how we got here and the reasons that we believe what we believe, you know. And I think for a lot of people, it's, you know, some of those things, you know, it's helpful from time to time to be reminded of the reasons that you believe this in this plan to begin with, and why you've given it so much credence up until now. And I think, you know, in these final days, and again, I think that, you know, people who listen to my show and who listen to your channel, they're already deeply committed. But I think it helps a lot of people to revisit some of these things to shore up their confidence in terms of where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I think that I think we've all had those moments where we're just like questioning things. And then for me, I always just go back and look at what was put into place. And it makes it to where I'm like, no, really, my timing was the one that was wrong. I wanted it to be so much faster, you know, because we've known all of these things for a while. And I remember 107 like basically saying to someone, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Nino, but he was basically saying, this isn't about you. This is about everyone else. They need to wake up. You've been awake for a while, but we have to do this right, because if we don't, it's going to be more painful. So I don't know. I think that there's so many things that has been happening in the background, and Trump's world tour that he did, you know, that where he went to all of these different countries, that was such a big deal. And a lot of people didn't realize that. And then when you start seeing all the stuff that he put in place with these countries and everything set up for right now, and even the stuff that they did with what is the name of that place? It was Myanmar. You know, I think that was like a trial run for later. But and 107 actually said that it was something that they needed to kind of get kinks out. But also, I mean, that was a huge opium hub. And then they took down Afghanistan, and that was another big opium hub. I I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that you can look at and see that he put everything into place. This whole team had this so thought out. And even though we want it to be like right now, and sometimes I like yell because I want it to be like a year ago. I mean, I thought that everything was going to go down on the day of the inauguration. I remember being like sick that day of just thinking, do it now, just do it now, please. And it didn't go down. And I had to reevaluate everything at that point and figure out what I really believed, and was I still committed to this plan. And I knew ultimately I was. And I knew that I was still right, but I just had the timing wrong, and that certain things I wanted to push ahead, of course, because I wanted justice. But I know now that the way that they've done this has actually been so amazing and so beautiful to see it play out. And I'm so glad that, man, I'm blessed that I can see all of this stuff and I can watch it and I can tell that this is what they're doing, instead of being someone else that's been asleep and is sitting over here, not just living in fear of what is going on. And they can't see that all of this stuff around them is changing and that all the systems are purposely collapsing so something else better can come in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think people are, if they think that nothing is happening, and this was a big part of Juan's, speech when he revealed himself publicly. And yes, there were a lot of people who didn't think that was really him. There's a million different theories. I mean, I heard actually from, I don't know if I mentioned this yet on my show, but I mean, I had a listener who was actually at the event who sent me a photo of him shaking Juan's hand and assured me that it was him. And it certainly appeared to be. But anyway, one of the things he was talking about during that speech was that it's gotten to the point where so many people they keep saying, well, nothing's happening. And it's like, he goes through this just laundry list of things that have been happening. And it's just the tip of the iceberg of all the things that have been happening. I mean, you mentioned, Myanmar, and I think it's Sudan. I think it was Guinea, maybe. There were like 3 different countries now that have had their military do exactly what we expect is going to happen here in the United States and all throughout the world. And I think, it's really just the introduction. It's the very beginning of a process that we're going to see worldwide of this military alliance taking down these corrupt governments all over the world. And by extension, of course, this cabal, this evil system. But it's going to take, it's taken a long time to set this thing up, because everything had to be set up exactly the right way. And all the evil had to be drawn out. I mean, I could go into, and I have in detail on my show, all of these reasons why it's taken this long. But at the end of the day, we are very, very close. And as Juan said, I mean, again, it could be disinformation. They could, the white hats could be putting this out there and then be taking an entirely different approach, but I don't think so. I mean, I truly believe that, I haven't had it verified to me that it's actually going to be an arrest, but it certainly sounds to me like we're moving in that direction. All of the dominoes are there. All of them are set up. I mean, you've got Sussman, of course, but, you've got everything is pointing toward HRC. And it certainly appears, you mentioned Durham, it certainly appears that he's just waiting for that exact right moment. And I think that, we're very, very close, and it's very exciting. But I think I feel a real big urge to just tell everybody, to leave everybody at the end of every show with this feeling of, don't lose faith, don't lose hope. Not at this point. I mean, we are literally in the 11th hour. I mean, we are in the final stages now. I mean, nobody said that this was going to be easy. And, and I've been saying all along, and all of the podcasters out there really have been in agreement. This is going to be a tough battle, a tough fight. And we can't allow, I think the enemy in a sense is trying to wear us down in a sense by having us continually have our expectations not be met. Like using this sort of psychological tactic against us to try to get us to, to lose faith in the plan by putting out disinformation. And yes, there have been, I'm starting to discover, some of the people that, I thought were real patriots, turns out they may not be. And, I talked about this a little bit today. I'm not going to say anything in terms of who I'm talking about because I don't want to smear anyone. But I've been hearing a lot of questionable information about certain individuals that, and this is nothing new. This has been ongoing, but this is a process that I think is causing a lot of people in these final stages to get very, very close to losing faith. Some people, very close to losing faith in this plan, and as things get more and more dire. And I think, in some sense, it's kind of to be expected. This is a situation that's really, it separates the men from the boys. And I think it's meant to be that way. The people who ultimately believe in, in this plan, and really, I should say, ultimately believe in God and understand that, God's about to do something entirely different. He's about to do something entirely miraculous and new that's never been done before. And we're the generation that's going to experience that. And I've said this before, I'm going to go down believing in this, in this transformative era that we're living through. I'm going to go down one way or another believing in God doing this amazing thing for humanity. Regardless of what happens to me throughout this process, that's what I ultimately believe in. That's why, and I'm never going to stop fighting for that. I'm never going to stop believing in that, because believing in anything else, to me, is just far more horrifying. Because if we lose this fight, if we lose this battle, if this really, we're talking about thousands of years of darkness. There's no bottom. If this country falls, if freedom falls, if we fail. And I don't believe for a second that is going to happen. I don't believe for 1 second that God would allow it to happen. And that's the reason why, like you and I have been talking about all along, that he's bringing his people together and he's having us unify as a force against evil. And I think it's an amazing, amazing time to be alive. And it's truly an honor. It really is.
Well, you just said that so pretty, so beautifully that I think I am going to end with that, because I love that. I love what you said. I love that it kind of is leaving everything with hope at the end of it, because, we have battles every single day and we have to choose on what side we're going to be on. And the thought of not choosing good, for me, there is no other option. I absolutely refuse to step away from this. And I know that because of these amazing patriots and the people that are awakened and the bonds that they have, I know without a doubt that it's from the Lord. And I can tell, and I can sense whenever people are talking to one another about, you can just, when you do some of your podcasts, I can feel the Lord speaking through you. And I don't say that to you just to be kind. I genuinely feel the Lord speaking through you. And every time that you capture things that when you speak, when you laugh, we laugh. And when you're mad, we're mad. And when you cry, we cry, because you have this way of genuinely pulling out our emotions that a lot of us just kind of bottle all the time, because we have to, because we're constantly around people that don't agree with us. But then whenever we hear someone else like you through your podcast freely doing these emotions and going through everything that we feel, it's kind of like a release for us, because for a lot of this journey, we have felt alone. And so now I'm so blessed that the Lord is just bringing people together, and that I've met you and all of these other people through the round table, and finally feel like there's connection happening globally that's so deep and powerful, the way that it's supposed to be. And people are finally realizing and seeing through this lie that everything has been projected to us constantly, over and over and over again. Look over here, never look at each other. Don't focus on who you are and how good you are and the humanity of others. Instead, let's just look over here at this storm that's coming or this false flag over here, and never truly giving you the connection that you so value. Everyone values that. Everyone's soul values connection and they need it, but they have suppressed this beauty that we have as human beings. They have almost like taken away our humanity. And now I believe that it's just flooding back in, where people are just genuinely loving and caring about each other the way it's supposed to be. And it's just going to grow and grow and grow and become so beautiful. And once all of this evil is just done and exposed, it's going to be this incredible, magical world. But I want to say thank you for coming on. And
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for those kind words. It really is. It's very humbling. It's amazing to be in a position where I can speak my heart and so many people can resonate. It's a blessing. I talk about it all the time, and like I say to people, you never know the impact that you're going to have, and that's why I think it's so important. Because a person like myself, like I said, I didn't expect that I was going to have people react in the way that I do. And I think this in the same way that a lot of folks out there, maybe it's through a different medium, but they have amazing beauty inside of them, like you said, that's been suppressed. And that genuine desire and yearning for connection, I think when people listen to people be real and actually experience real emotions and dare to actually share them with people, they have an emotional response to that. I mean, I've had plenty of those experiences myself, when I've listened to people and had similar responses. And I think that that's what the world needs more of, is for people to embrace their humanity, not be afraid of it, not think that it's something to be ashamed of, but to embrace it and to learn. I mean, I think a lot of us need to learn about our emotions and about our feelings and how we perceive the world, why we feel the way that we do. There's so many people out there who have not a clue about why they feel the way that they do. They're depressed, they're angry, they're all of these things, and they don't even have any inkling as to why, or any idea as to, the disconnect that's within their soul, that, that's just, they're yearning. There's so many people out there that are just yearning for a better world. And they don't know what that means necessarily. But for me, I think that better world, we could define it in a million different ways, but really what it comes down to is what you keep talking about, which is that pure bond, that love of humanity, that love of one another. That if we allow that light to come into the world, if we allow that light to come into our hearts, it changes everything. And I think that people need to see bold examples of people not being afraid of that and actually embracing our true source of strength. I talk about all the time, my allegiance is to the truth. It's not about what someone tells me. The reason that we're here is because we believed what people told us. We took for granted, like people define things in a certain way. The establishment, the system, this, bright, shiny object over here told us, this was this and that was that. But the truth of the matter is that all of that was a lie. Our most profound source of strength is found in unity, and that unity is through love, and that love is from God. And that's what's coming into the world. And, that's what the enemy, at the end of the day, they say nothing can stop what's coming, which is true. But at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. This ascension process that God has ordained cannot be stopped. This light that's coming into the world, that's flooding into all of our hearts simultaneously. I think it's being done, a little bit at a time, like God's turning on the hose a little bit here, a little bit there, and then, on again, off again, on again, off again. I think the white hats are kind of doing that as well with their positive technology that's going to heal us. I think that's what's happening behind the scenes. I think some of the switches are starting to get flipped. And I think that's what's happening. I think that's that energy that we're feeling coming into the world, and it can't be stopped. And, to be a part of that, of ushering this light and this beauty into the world is, it's truly is a blessing. So thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you for having me on your show. I really do appreciate it. I think I'm going to maybe have you send this to me and turn this into an episode for my show. So I think this is a really good one.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad that you came on, and I'm glad that I got to talk to you because, yeah, I mean, I think you're a really interesting guy, and you've, you've changed a lot of stuff for me with just like connection with the round table and everything like that. It's been incredible, and I know that a lot of people have been blessed through your channel. So, so I want to say thank you even for them because I know that they really appreciate you. But yeah,
I appreciate them and all of you as well. I mean, it's been a blessing. Believe me, it's been both ways. I have to remind everybody of that all the time. As people say amazingly kind and beautiful things to me that, that are so beautiful and so kind that sometimes I have a tough time even processing it because it's just so beautiful. But folks need to understand that it goes both ways. What I do, the reason that I do it, it's not a burden for me. This is it's like oxygen for me. Getting on here and being able to talk to my audience and being able to have people who resonate with my words. It's one of the greatest gifts that I've ever received. And so it's not something that is one-sided. It's very, very much a blessing for me. And the more people that come into my life as a result, the more profound it gets. And I'm completely convinced that it's a divine force. It's a divine energy that led me in this direction. And I'm just super excited for the future. I know we're going to go through some very difficult times, and we are going through difficult times now. But more and more, I'm trying to focus my energy and my attention on, what lies beyond the storm, and I think that's probably a good place for us to end. So thank you, Atlas, again. I really do appreciate it.
thank you for coming, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.